Hi, my name is Toni, and I've been an educator at the collegiate level for over 20 years. And I've won some awards, I've won some accolades. However, never have my end of semester surveys been higher than when I implemented a trained chatbot. So let me talk to you about AristAI, which I use in my class right now, so you can evaluate whether it's something that you might want to use, but I highly recommend it. And honestly, I don't know that I want to go away from using my trained chatbot. So let me talk to you about 5 reasons why I love it and probably will never stop using it. Reason number one, I love my trained chatbot, is that it feeds curiosity, but with accurate information. If your students have a question about class concepts, they may start to try to look it up within the book or the online material, but oftentimes they turn to Google to learn more. And I know in my field, Google has information that's going to pop up that is riddled with inaccuracies. So I'd rather have my students use a search engine like a trained chatbot, where it's going to point them to the first source information from my class. And once they learn about that information from materials that I've provided them, the chatbot even gives a little explanation as to where they can go to learn more about the topic, therefore continuing to feed that curiosity and allowing them to set a solid foundation in the topic. Reason number two, I love AristAI as my trained chatbot is because it levels the learning field. I have some students who have dexterity issues and it's hard for them to type, but AristAI has a voice input. And students who have visual issues and can't read very well, AristAI will actually read the information back to them, which is fantastic with regard to accessibility. I also have students who have documented anxiety, and if they're working late at night, if they email me a question, I'm not going to be awake. I'm asleep at night. So they're going to have to wait till the next day, which interrupts their flow as they're working on assignments. Where if I have a trained chatbot, they can type in the question, reassure themselves with the answer, and continue to work on that information so they're not frozen with that anxiety. Another thing is it helps marginalized populations who might feel uncomfortable asking their professor questions potentially. They may have found school not to be as safe a space, and so they can dive into the topic more autonomous where they don't have to worry about having a situation where they feel judged for their type of question. And one of the things I do love is it can read PDFs. So if you have a schedule, if you have a handout, AristAI can read that PDF and bring that information to the student. And then when they have their question answered, they can click on that PDF, open it up, and learn more about the topic from your resources. And to me, I love it that it's integrated in Canvas so beautifully. Reason number three that I'm in love with this is it allows me to gather data. There are reports that allow me to see what questions my students have asked. And if you are making an assessment based on questions the students are either curious about or need more information on, you can tailor your assessments to those learning objectives and you can challenge them at a greater level. The other thing that I love is it allows you to respond to your students' needs. If there are many questions about course logistics, you can look at those questions and every day, every few days, you can post an announcement to all the students that answer those most frequently asked questions, therefore making sure that communication is even more effective. And the other piece is I can see how many hundreds of questions that my students have asked. Those are questions that I haven't been asked and that they've gotten answers to very, very quickly, which means it allows more time for me to spend richly engaging with students who really want to learn deeper on those topics. Reason number four, and possibly to me, the most important reason, is it decreases frustration with everyone involved in the class. If I have a student who comes to me and says, I don't think you covered this concept in the course materials, we can type it in the trained chatbot and we can show them exactly where it was covered. And then they can model their future learning and future studying off of the locations that they might have overlooked in that past assessment. Additionally, with my young and budding teaching team, sometimes they need to refresh their memory on a concept before a student comes into office hours, or even while a student is in office hours. So they can type in that concept and they can show the student and walk through those first source materials. And lastly, sometimes students just feel insecure about some of their answers. And so they need to make sure that their foundational knowledge is solid. So they might want to double check a calculation and find out if that's the one that they want to use for this particular math question. And they can go back and look at it and look at all the ways that it can be applied from various angles in the class itself. So to me, frustrations decreased from the instructor all the way to the student who's working late at night and just needs a little reassurance. And number 5, that I think you will really enjoy having a trained chatbot in your class, is that it paints a big picture. At the end of the semester, students can type in a concept such as, tell me all the places we talked about proteins, and it will showcase from chapter 1 all the way through chapter 12 exactly where it was discussed, and it shows them holistically what they've learned about a particular concept throughout the whole entire class, and so they can really grasp how it can be applied as they move on to future classes. To me, having the trained chatbot AristAI in my class has made my classroom so much more enjoyable, both for my in-person students as well as my online students, and even my hybrid students have been using it. There are hundreds of questions that my chatbot covers per week that allow me more time so that I can take care of my students holistically much better.